Hi, friends. I'm Becca Wierwille, author of the Road Trip Rescue series of faith filled contemporary adventures for kids ages 8 to 12. And today, I'm going to give you a little preview of one of my author visit presentations. So, I know that a lot of teachers or principals or librarians might be interested in having an author come to their school. It's a really fun opportunity, especially if you have any students who think it would be fun to be an author one day. It's really cool for them to be able to meet an author, to be able to hear about the process, to be able to ask questions. I know that the author visits I was able to enjoy as a student really impacted me, and I still think about them today. So these can be really great gifts to your students, but it's hard for you to know what to expect. And so my goal in this video is to give you a little preview of this presentation so you know what to expect if I were to come to your school or homeschool group or other organization. I offer both in-person and virtual visits to grades kindergarten through 8th. This road trip rescue presentation that I'll be previewing for you today is designed for grades 3rd through 7th. So in the presentation, I'll walk you through some of the things I would talk about without going into all of the detail that I would go into in a full presentation. All right, let's go ahead and get started. For my road trip rescue presentation and my other author visit presentations, I like to have a slideshow so that students can have a visual as they are listening, whether they're listening virtually or in person. So this is my road trip rescue presentation. And the first thing I do is talk about me. I like to give students an introduction. If they're going to listen to someone talk for the next 45 minutes or so, it's good for them to know who they're talking to. So I explain that I'm the author of the Road Trip Rescue series, a mom. I used to work as a kindergarten teacher and a newspaper reporter. But before we go any further, there's something really important for us to talk about in these school visits. And it's something that kids have probably already noticed. It's that I was born with one hand. So I was born with a limb difference. That's something that is in Road Trip Rescue, book 1 in my series. And so we talk about it. I let students ask some of the first questions they might have. I ask them to think about what they would imagine would be really hard to do with just one hand. And then they can ask me if I can do it and how. Now, I do give a little disclaimer now because I've learned that students are really creative and they like to ask me if I can do cartwheels, if I can do handstands. And so I always give the disclaimer that I am not a gymnast. So I can't do cartwheels. I don't walk on my hands. I don't think I could do those things even if I had two hands because I'm just not a gymnast. But I love to answer all their other questions. Some of the most common questions I get: how do you drive a car? How do you ride a bike? How do you cook? How do you push your daughter's stroller? How do you get dressed? So we get all sorts of questions. There are some questions I get almost every visit. There are some questions that I have only gotten once. So it's really fun to see what the students come up with as we talk through this and to get them interacting right from the start. After that, we talk about both of my books and all of my books that I have right now. So, right now, as I record this, I have Road Trip Rescue Book 1 and Road Trip Return Book 2. Book 3 will still be added, soon be added to this presentation so kids can get a full picture of the series. But as we go into these books, I talk about some of the themes. I again ask for participation to think about who all loves dogs, who's flown an airplane before, how many of you have done this or that. And so we get some good conversation flowing that way. And then we jump in. So, the three major things we go through in the Road Trip Rescue presentation: we talk about the creation process of Road Trip Rescue step by step. We talk about how students can create stories from their own lives and imaginations. And then we read chapter 1 of Road Trip Rescue. And of course, I don't have it on here, but we have time for questions and answers at the end because I know that all those students who had questions about my hand did not have a chance to ask them at the beginning because we had to keep moving. So, first off, the creation of Road Trip Rescue. When you're writing a book, before it becomes an actual book that you can hold in your hand, it has to go through a lot of steps. So, these steps that we talk through in this presentation, starting with an idea, it's really hard to write a book if you don't have any idea what you're going to write about. And then brainstorming, starting to help this idea have life and have a character in mind and know what the character is going to face along the way. Then the story has to be drafted, which is another way to say it has to be written down for the first time. And then you revise the story, which means rewriting and editing. And then we talk about collaboration because a lot of people think of authors as sitting at a desk all day writing and working. But the truth is, a lot of people are involved in the making of one book. So we talk about what all goes into collaborating and working together when it comes to a book. So, for this presentation, we go through each bullet point. We talk about what that means in a general sense, which is really great for young storytellers who are thinking about how they might take their own ideas and make them into stories. So, that's where we start. And then at most of those points, I also go into a specific example from the creation of Road Trip Rescue. So, for example, when we talk about brainstorming, I talk about how I didn't initially know that Kimmy, the main character in Road Trip Rescue, would be born with one hand like I was. That was something that came later as I was brainstorming and trying to figure out what character would really need to go on a search to find her long lost dog. And so during this part in the presentation, and this is one of the students' favorite things about the road trip rescue presentation, we get to do a little show and tell with my prosthetic arms. So I show them the littlest prosthetic arm that I had when I was just a baby. And of course, I've got to ask if anyone has a baby brother or sister or cousin or neighbor, do you think your baby would keep this on their hand? I would venture to say no. I know my daughter would not keep this on her arm. So I don't think I wore this a whole lot, but that's the smallest one I have. And then after that, I have a few that look like this. So it doesn't quite look like a real hand, but there's a strap that would go around my shoulder, around my back, and then on my opposite shoulder. And when I pull forward, it would open. And when I pull back, it would close. So I let students take a look at that one. And then the other one, students get to pass around most of the time is this one. So this one looks more like an actual hand. It's really cool to see how the technology developed. This was a long time ago, and it's cool to think about how much it would have changed since then. But this one, I remember they told me you can even paint the fingernails. So that's our little show and tell portion. After we go through all the different steps of story creation, it's time to talk about how students can create stories from their own lives and imaginations. So, we talk about being an observer, looking around, talking to family and friends, basically using what's already around you to help you come up with ideas is a really fun thing to be able to do. And then after that section, we dive into chapter 1 of Road Trip Rescue. Chapter 1, as you can see on the screen, is called It All Started on the Toilet. And students often like to read this out loud with me. I often hear some chuckling and we laugh and we talk about why would I have titled the first chapter that way? Well, it's a good way to get people's attention. Did it get your attention? It's all about knowing my reader and being able to connect with my audience. And a great way to connect is to make someone laugh. So then we read chapter 1. And I'm not going to read all of chapter 1 here today. However, if you're interested in hearing chapter 1, you can find that on my YouTube video called What is Road Trip Rescue? And then we talk about how the students grown-ups can find me on my website, beccawierwille.com, on my YouTube channel, at Becca Wierwille, and on social media at Becca Wierwille. And the reason I like to make sure students know this, partially so their grown-ups can connect with me, of course, but then also at almost every visit I've done, I have not been able to answer every question. In fact, I'm not sure if I've ever been able to answer every question just because time is limited. And so, if students have questions that I don't have a chance to answer during the question and answer section of the visit, I want them to be able to reach out to me. So, their teachers or their parents or grown-ups can sign up for my email list and reach out and ask the students questions. And I am happy to answer the questions then. And then, of course, we get into our question time. I encourage students to ask more questions about my arm for this presentation if they have more questions about that. I encourage them to ask about being an author and what that's like, questions about my books. So, students come up with the best questions. I am never bored during these school visits, they definitely stay exciting. So, if this sounded interesting to you and you would like to book me to come to your school or homeschool group or other organization, you can go to my website, beccawierwille.com/author-visits. Or you can just go to my main website and click on the little author visits button. On that page, I have information about all of my different presentations. So, this was the road trip rescue presentation, but I also have several other options. Certain options are geared towards certain age groups. And I also have pricing on there, though I will say that if you are a private school or homeschool group with a limited budget, please reach out and I'm happy to work with you and your budget to make this visit happen for your group. And on that page, there's also a button. You can just click that, and there's a form you can fill out to get started scheduling your visit. I try to make this as easy on you as possible. I used to be a kindergarten teacher, so I know that as teachers and administrators, you are busy and don't have a lot of time to be on your email. So we try to make this process really smooth. I give you all the details you need so we can go ahead and move forward and get this on the calendar. I hope to visit with some of your schools soon and hope you enjoyed this little mini author visit preview today.